Hey guys, Thingfishy here. So make your character, choose the Samurai starting class, and grab a golden seed as a starting item. Welcome to build guide number 16, and for this one we have one objective. Beat the game and get to endgame levels as quickly as possible. Whenever I make a mistake in the endgame when I'm filming one of my guides and need to refilm something, this is the build that I use to get another character there as quickly as possible. Now, there's a couple of reasons that you might want to get through the game quickly. The first being to get to a certain level for PvP, and the second is if you fancy doing a New Game Plus build. I've still never set foot in New Game Plus in Elden Ring, and there's a couple of build guides that I want to make in New Game Plus, so hopefully this build will function as a cool setup guide for those builds. If you're going to use this guide to make a PvP character, check out the description for a word on starting classes. I'm going to show you the full setup for this video, so you don't need to go to the setup guide to make this character. I'll timestamp this in case you want to jump right into the action. So from the Gatefront Grace, jump down into the cellar and grab the Whetstone Blade. Then ride south towards Weeping Peninsula, over the bridge towards the first boss of the game, trying to pick up items while on Torrent. Grab the Somber One and then head onto this hill across the road for the Pickled Foulfoot. Now continue heading south to light the Argyll Lake South Grace. Then south towards the bridge and across to Weeping. Grab the Stone Sword Key on the bridge and keep heading south towards the Castle Morn Rampart Grace. From the Grace, head towards the castle and grab the Golden Seed from this ledge, then southeast to the beach for the Somber 2. Back to the Grace and west up the hill, up the cliffs to the Carlu Baptismal Church for a Sacred Tear. Then back to the Grace, round to the right and hug the cliffs on your left, across the bridge and up to the Church of Pilgrimage. Grab the Sacred Tear and the Bleed Grease outside, then head southwest to the final church for the final tier. Walk back to the Gatefront and head up the hill, grabbing the Golden Seed on the way. Light the Storm Hill Grace and head northeast to the Strength Tier. Jump down the steps and continue heading southeast to kill the Golden Veil Knight for the Ash of War. Then jump down onto this building, grab the Lance and the Exalted Flesh from the camp. Head across the Saints Bridge, then southeast. Past these ruins and jump down the cliffs, then loot the graveyard for the Sleep Pot recipe and all of the golden runes. Then down the steps and into the third church for another Sacred Tear and the Physic. Head south through the Mistwood, past the lift and grab the Spiked Crack Tear. Then southwest to the Mistwood ruins for the Axe Talisman, and east from there to get to Fort Height, up to the top for the first half of the Dagdas Medallion. Now walk back to the third church and take the teleporter in the river behind it to Caelid. Head south from the Bestial Sanctum, picking up the Golden Seed and lighting the Grace by the bridge. Ride around to the right, then towards this tree. Jump down the roots and then... yeah, this is why we grab the Grace by the Great Bridge. Across to Lena's Rise and light the Grace there. Then up the Spirit Spring, loot the runes, then towards the Minor Erd Tree and use the Spirit Spring behind it to reach Fort Farath. Into the fort, up the ladder for the second half of the Dagdas Medallion, then jump down the second hole. Pick up the Golden Rune 12 by the rats, then across and down for Radagon's Soreseal. Now walk back to the Storm Hill Grace and head north to the Broken Bridge. Drop down and round the cliffs to Liurnia. Drop into the Church of Irith for another tier, then back to the Grace and down the stones. Ride north past the putrefied ruins and take the teleporter to Raya Lucaria. Light the Grace, then jump down into the lake and hug the cliffs on your right around to the key. Up these rocks and drop down from them to stop the dragon aggroing to you for a safe walk back. Now back to the gate and south into the gate town. Grab the golden seeds there and head across the lake to the boiled prawn shack, then south to pick up the Dex tier. Now into the academy. Open the door and light the Grace in the Church of the Cuckoo, and kill all of the enemies following you. Then back into the first room for a cheeky Somber 3. This one saves you dropping down by the Bellum Church when setting up your Somber builds. Then through the rest of the dungeon. Drop down off this cliff and grab the Carian Knight armour. Equip this on the lift for solid defence for the early and mid game. Light the Classroom Grace, then double back on yourself to descend the other side of the lift. Then get abducted at the bottom to get to Volcano Manor. Jump down into the lava, then head around and onto the top of this building for the Somber 6. Then up to the lift and along the cliff for the Somber 5. Escape Volcano Manor by heading left from the respawn point and jumping down through the caves. Now back to Leonard's Rise in Caelid. Jump onto the side of the bridge to bait the Knight's Cavalry into yeeting himself off. Alright, well, as long as my runes aren't on the side of the bridge. Now, usually in my build guides, we'd grab any weapon requirements we need, and then do this. But in this guide, we're gonna keep the requirements at base, and do this. Now head to Fort Fareth, apply the bleed grease to your Uchi, and kill Grail, popping a pickled Foulfoot as she dies. Put all of her remaining runes into your Vigour. And that's our setup done. Now, I did do a couple of things there that I wouldn't usually do when rushing the game, like killing Grail, so you can check the comments for a slightly faster but more unforgiving route if you wish. Walk to the Argyll Lake South Grace, level up your flasks, equip the Spike tier and the Dex tier, along with the Saw Seal, and head south to the Forlorn Everjoe. And in many ways the Bloodhound Knight here is the hardest fight you're going to have to do for a while. With the amount of vigour that we have, there's not much chance of us dying though. He'll go down relatively easily just with this +0 Uchi. Now walk back to the South Lucaria gate, jump down one more time, and then ride towards the Erd Tree to find this teleporter. Ride through the ruins to Iji, pop some runes, and level Bloodhound's Fang to +6. Now for Margit, and you have two options here. First off, the Bloodhound's Fang weapon art is great, big damage and big posture damage too. Alternatively, you can go for parries if you like. Now for Godric. Godric is super slow, so charged attacks and weapon arts for the win. Head to Raya Lucaria for Red Wolf. As usual, this is a very easy one. 3 attacks will do it. Grab the stone sword key in the courtyard and head up to Renala. Now we're going full try hard on this one, so instead of our usual chilled 2 cycle, we're going for 1. So drink your physic before the fight, spam R1s at her and cast Golden Vow just as she dies. For phase 2, get a chargey in at the start with no follow up, then hit her with a full weapon art and take the riposte. Now head back to the Boiled Prawn Shack and ride southeast to speak to Raya. Then back to the shack for her necklace and buy some boiled prawn from Bogart. Now this is a very important step if you're using this guide to make a PvP character, as pretty much the only thing that I know about Elden Ring PvP is that boiled crab is pretty good. And doing this step enables you to get it later. Back to Raya for the Volcano Manor invitation. Then up the Dectus lift and take her hand at the top to get to Volcano Manor. So for Noble, charged attacks and weapon arts trivialise this one. He's relatively easy to stagger and you can keep spamming that first part of the weapon art all the way through the fight. Now head through the dungeon and up to the Stone Sword Key gate. Jump down and grab the Somber 7 by the Abductor. Now back through the dungeon again to Rykard. As usual, equip the Strength Physic, put the Lance in one hand, Serpent Hunter in the other, and spam crouching L1s on him. Now I'm going to let this whole fight play out as I've seen some confusion about it in my comment sections. First off, it's not a stun lock, but 6 L1s will stagger him in both phases. This means that you only have to deal with the snake combos in phase 1 and then the snake and sword combos in phase 2. You still have to learn how to dodge all of these, so it can be a little rough at low health. But if you constantly spam these crouching attacks, he won't have time to do that manic skull attack in phase 2, which is by far the most dangerous and time consuming part of this fight on a casual run. Now a quick but very important tip here, make sure that you swap your physic back to the Dex one after this fight. I've suffered in the late game countless times before realising that I still have the strength tier equipped from the Rykard fight. Now to Altus and to the Draconic Tree Sentinel. I'd highly recommend my R2 parry strat for this, so you can check out my guide if you're not familiar with that. Going for this approach takes a lot of the variables out of the fight, so it's my go-to for getting this one done quickly. Run through Lanedale and bully the Erdtree avatar. Now before Godfrey, we'll take a little detour up to the Colosseum for the Ritual Shield Talisman for some extra survivability. For Godfrey, do nothing but rolling R1s for all of his attacks. You only need to worry about 3/4 of his health doing this, as you'll get a stagger at about 1/4 health if you can keep the pressure on. For Morgott, you can use either charged R2s or your weapon art and go for staggers. Now head straight up to the mountaintops for Fire Giant. And happily, Bloodhound's Fang is a god tier weapon for this fight. But it does go without saying that because we're in a rush, this guy's going to spend 3 minutes continuously rolling away from us. When he eventually stops, spam charged R2s and go for staggers on the foot. Buff up with Golden Vow at the start of phase 2, then hit the hand with charged attacks. You might need a couple more on the leg depending on how phase 2 went. Then hit the eye with a full weapon art. For the rest of the fight, stay in front of him and do rolling R1s on the hand to punish all of those slam attacks. Now before we speak to Melina, head back to Kaled for Radahn. Ride away to despawn him at the start and then buff up as he runs towards you. Charged attacks are perfect for this fight. Be wary of using your weapon art, as sometimes it can yeet you right in front of his attacks. And it's sod's law that I didn't get it the one time that I actually filmed this run. But it's quite common to get a stagger on him with this weapon. And bearing in mind it took me a few attempts to get one with my stagger build, that really shows you how good Bloodhound's Fang is. Speak to Alexander, then head up to the Altus Plateau. Ride around Volcano Manor to the Seathwater Terminus and speak to him again in the lava. Head through Faram all the way to the Transept Grace. Then nip back to Carle at the Church of Valor for 3 crackpots and the crafting kit. Then to the Ball Prawn Shack and south into the village of the Albanurics for any extra mushrooms and St. Trina's lilies that you need, and the first half of the Dectus Medallion. Then to the secluded cell in Stormvale for the extra crackpots from the pot boys nearby. Put the duo to sleep, then use charged R2s and the weapon art to make light work of them. Run through the dungeon, up the stairs and through the Stonesword Key gate, all the way up to our main man. Do some sparring with him and take the shard he gives you before he heads back to the Church of Vows to chill out with Miriel. Now whenever I do this little run, probably the biggest variable for how long it takes is this guy. He's more of a problem than most of the bosses, so feel free to just run past him. That's what I do if I'm trying to be quick. If you do want to fight him for the extra runes though, stick with the parry strategy like we did with the first Draconic Sentinel. Now for Beast and Malekith. The first part of the weapon art is perfect for Beast. It builds really good posture damage, and you can actually dodge a bunch of his attacks with the 2-part weapon art if you time it right. Do not use your weapon art for Malekith's slow 1-2 though. You will fling yourself right into the path of his weapon. For this fight, stick to charged R2s and the occasional first part of the weapon art whenever you can. for the Ashen Capital, head up to my most favouriteest of bosses and do a charged R2 combo followed by a full weapon art to kill him. That was weird. Wait. Right, so I've been 10 levels down on Dex ever since Rykard. And I forgot to equip the Jar Shard. Okay, so you guys will be much stronger for all of these fights. Now, this is the point in the run where you can expect a fair few deaths if you're not super confident. Godfrey Horaloo is a bit rough. But because Horaloo is far scarier than Godfrey, I always do a little strat here to make the second part of the fight a lot more manageable. Treat Godfrey exactly the same as the first one, and only go for rolling R1s. When his health gets down, watch out for the start of the stomp attack he does, and hit a full weapon art the second you see it. He did it at super low health here, but you can usually get both parts off and still have time to dodge his stomp. Now prepare yourselves for the emotional roller coaster that was this Horaloo fight. Now for Radagon and Elden Beast. And once again, while this weapon is amazing for both of them, you're not going to be bullying them around like my other builds, so don't be disheartened if this takes a few tries. For Radagon, I like to go for an early stagger by hitting some charged R2s at the start and following it with some weapon arts. A full weapon art is safe after you dodge the triple slam, and I tend to use rolling R1s to safely finish off that manic second phase. For Elden Beast, I treat this fight as if I'm using a bonk build, going for charged R2s and staggers. When you do get a stagger, make sure you get some free R1s in before you take the riposte to maximise your damage. You also have time to get a full weapon art in here, as long as you've got the stamina for it. So, that's it. The final boss is dead, and we are just under the 4-hour mark. Now this was with a fair few deaths, some backtracking for forgotten items as usual, and me watching all of the cutscenes for my intro footage. So I reckon you could comfortably get this down to 2.5–3 hours if all goes perfectly, and even less with a faster setup route. Now the reason that we rushed straight for Radabeast is that Elden Beast's Remembrance can be traded for the Sacred Relic Sword. If you were say rushing to level 150, you could grab this sword now, respec, do Var's questline, and then do the Mogwin Palace rune farm to get enough runes for this very quickly. If however you don't fancy farming, head to Caria Manor to bully Loretta. I'm only doing this for the Carian Retaliation Ash of War, so feel free to skip it if you're not a parry enjoyer. Drop down to the east of Rani's Rise and buy it from Pidia. Now to Castle Sol for Commander Nile. Kill the first summon with charged R2s, then get rid of the second. For the Commander, as always you can bait the electric foot attack for a parry and a riposte, or just get stuck in and parry his standard attacks. Grab the other half of the secret medallion, and before we use it, head to Plassey. Really simple strategy for this one. Just go for staggers using your charged R2s and the weapon arm. When he does stagger, run round and get a full weapon art on the head for big damage. Otherwise, it's just a standard Plassey endurance fight. Now head to the consecrated snowfield, all the way to Ordner town. Ride southwest to the teleporter and into Mogwyn's palace. Moog is super easy with Bloodhound's Fang. Go for charges until you get a riposte, then weapon arts afterwards. If you use bleed grease for this fight, you can quite easily kill him before Nihil. But what you're seeing here is the worst case scenario. Heal your way through Nihil and use weapon arts for the final stagger in phase 2. And if you're going for a level 120 PvP build, we're there. Grab a larval tier, all the gear you want, and head off to the Colosseum. But I'm not going to make a build guide without fighting her. Of course, you'll have noticed today that we didn't go to any of the underground bosses on this run. And I didn't think it would be particularly interesting for me to go there now and have you guys watch 10 minutes of me two-shotting everything at level 120. If I was following my standard All Remembrances video structure, I would have done them all between Gideon and Godfrey for a little more attack power against Godfrey. So if you're only here for the cool Bloodhound's Fang run, that's what to do. For Melania, I just went with my standard parrying strategy. You can see as usual that the armour is off for the light roll waterfowl dodge, but we do actually have enough endurance for some lighter armour if you'd prefer. Treat this fight like a bonk build, and do a charged R2 after every riposte, and spam roll away afterwards to keep yourself clear in case she waterfowls. And that's it. How to beat Elden Ring in just a few hours. If you made it this far and have tried this build, please do let me know how you got on in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more Elden Ring build guides. As always, thanks for watching. See you soon.